Reliable and verified emissions data. It's no longer a nice to have, it's a must have. But if you can't manage your data, how can you trust it? And if you can't trust it, how can you use it to steer your business? The way forward is DNV's Emissions Connect. From fragmented streams to a single source. From manual reporting to monitoring and verification in real time. From unreliable forecasts to simulation-based insights. A single source of verified data that the whole value chain can share, trust, and act on. Advance from raw data to sustainable operations with DNV's Emissions Connect. DNV, when trust matters.
Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to yet another virtual event brought to you by DNV. A great pleasure to welcome so many of you, more than 3,000 people that signed up today to join us for the official launch event of Emissions Connect. It's a special occasion because we've got something truly exciting to share with all of you. Now, as you all know, the maritime industry is currently faced with major transformations, probably two of the biggest transformations of all times, decarbonization and digitalization. And both of these megatrends, of course, pose some opportunities, but also major challenges. And today we would like to zoom into some of the challenges brought about by the latest maritime regulations, most notably the EU emission trading system. So we'll talk a little bit about the implications, what it means for the industry. We will talk about changing stakeholder demands in the industry more generally, and most importantly, we would like to talk about solutions, specifically one hot, new, innovative, digital DNV solution providing a single verified source of emissions data for the entire maritime value chain to share and to trust, or what I would like to refer to as the future of maritime emissions management. But who am I to talk about this, ladies and gentlemen? I am very relieved and very happy to not just be here in the studio in Hamburg all by myself, but I'm joined by a fantastic colleague. With me here today is Paul Lander, who is DNV Maritime's Digital Business Development Director. And together with a fantastic team, Paul has been instrumental in developing Emissions Connect. Paul, what's going to happen today?
Thank you, Anna. It's great to be here. And what's going to happen here today? Well, as you said, there are a lot of issues arising out of emissions data and emissions data management at the moment. We see charters, banks, insurance companies, etc., increasing the pressure on shipping companies. And we see that the direct impact from the introduction of the EU ETS and carbon intensity indicator used in the commercial setting causes massive issues and challenges to the industry. So here today we are to present a solution, and that solution, of course, is Emissions Connect. Emissions Connect solves many of these challenges for the industry. Furthermore, it goes to the core of these issues and solves many of the challenges fundamentally, so that the industry can handle these issues at scale.
Sounds really interesting and exciting, Paul. Looking forward to learning a little bit more later on, where you get to present on Emissions Connect what it looks like, what it can do. Thank you for now, but we have a little bit of ground to cover before that. So in a moment, I'm going to hand over to the CEO of DNV Maritime, Knut Øberg Nielsen, who will share his reflections about what needs to be done to tackle decarbonization, the grand challenge of our times. And then also we want to understand a little bit about the context and the regulatory driver behind behind Emissions Connect EU ETS. But let me go through a few practicalities for you first. Ladies and gentlemen, we have about 1.5 hours of program prepared for you. It's a short and sweet event, so stay tuned. And as I just said, we're going to kick it off with the opening remarks by our Maritime CEO. And then there is an interview session with our Director Environment, Eirik Nyhus, who will try to demystify EU ETS for you. So stay tuned for that one. And as promised, afterwards, we're going to welcome Paul back on stage for his expert presentation and a short deep dive into Emissions Connect. And then we're going to round off the event today with a panel discussion featuring some really interesting industry representatives from across the entire maritime value chain, discussing the challenge at hand and what they are doing with their companies to get prepared in time. And that session will be moderated by my colleague, Trond Hotne, our business director. Following the event, of course, a recording will be made available very, very shortly. It's going to be available on YouTube, but of course also on our website. So go to dnv.com/emissionsconnect to watch the recording, but also to find out more. And if you're interested, to fill out the contact form to get in touch with one of our DNV colleagues. Everybody's super keen to talk about this, so don't hesitate to get in touch. But, ladies and gentlemen, hold your horses for now, because now it's time to sit back and listen to the CEO of DNV Maritime. Over to Knut Øberg-Nielsen.
Thank you, Anna. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and a warm welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. We are here to update you on an exciting new solution designed to tackle one of the world's most pressing transformations. Decarbonization is truly the grand challenge of our time. It permeates and impacts all aspects of the maritime industry. How we build our ships, how we operate them, our port infrastructure, how we shape our regulations, and how we collaborate across the industry and beyond. As we face the seismic change needed to decarbonize our industry, the good news is we have the technology and the expertise to make a significant difference. Indeed, the maritime industry has already made great strides in reducing emissions, but we need to do more, and we need to do it faster. As the call to reduce emissions is getting ever more urgent, it is becoming clear that it affects more than just regulatory compliance. It impacts businesses, including factors such as balance sheet risk, access to capital, commercial attractiveness, and financial control. The balance between economic growth and environmental sustainability is a delicate one, but it is one that we must achieve if we are to build a better future for generations to come. Emission reduction is the crucial element. Reporting on progress will be key also commercially, going beyond regulatory compliance. The key to success to achieve net zero will be threefold: the development and uptake of innovative and effective technologies. Secondly, trust, transparency, and use of emission data across the maritime value chain. And thirdly, the willingness to progress and improve. It is essential that we invest in new technologies, explore alternative fuels, and embrace new practices that enhance efficiency while reducing emissions. At the same time, we must continue to encourage collaboration across the industry to ensure sharing of knowledge, expertise, and data. Collaboration is the true fuel of the future, but it requires mutual trust and a reliable source of truth. Take the Carbon Intensity Indicator, CII, and the EU Emissions Trading System as examples. The operational impact of these regulatory measures is significant. Shipping needs a different approach, especially when it comes to managing the significant financial exposure from ETS. It is creating a need for allocation and settlement of emissions allowances in the commercial space. The basis for doing so will be trusted data. Being able to trust your data, manage it effectively, and share your insights with relevant stakeholders is more critical than ever before. Trusted data is key to decarbonizing the industry. Without it, it is impossible to accurately quantify emissions, identify areas for improvement, and measure progress towards decarbonization goals. And this is where DNV's new emissions data verification solution comes into play, providing real-time verified emissions data to support all stakeholders in the maritime value chain. The challenge of decarbonization is immense, but it is also representing an opportunity to create a brighter future for both our industry and the planet. Let us work together to achieve this goal. Let us use smart and efficient solutions to power the progress. Let's advance together and make a difference. Emissions Connect is a powerful tool facilitating collaboration, enabling data sharing, instilling trust. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is so important. Don't forget, collaboration is the fuel of the future. Validated data is the currency, and trust needs to be at the heart of it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all the best for the remainder of the proceedings. I now hand you back to the studio and to Anna, our great moderator. Over to you, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Knut. Trust needs to be at the heart of it all. How very, very true. Now, before we shed some more light on what Emissions Connect is all about and what it looks like, we would like to give you a little bit of context first and look into the regulatory driver behind Emissions Connect. Of course, I'm talking about the EU ETS. As I'm sure all of you know, the EU emission trading system is a market-based mechanism introduced by the EU with the ambition to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the system will be extended to include emissions from shipping with a phased-in approach as of 2024. And what may sound like a long way off is actually just around the corner. So it's time to get prepared. What will be the impact on the industry? I had the chance to discuss that very question with Eirik Nie, who's DNV Maritime's Director Environment. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it live to the studio here today, but I had a chance to catch up with him when visiting Oslo last week. Eirik Nie, who's now on EU ETS. Welcome, everybody, here from our TV studio in DNV's headquarters in Oslo. I'm very pleased to now be joined by Maritime's Environment Director, Eirik Nie, who's not just a top-notch expert on the topic of regulatory affairs, but also happens to be the host of our famous Maritime Impact podcast. Today, no surprise, Eirik, we're here to talk about yet another set of maritime regulations. Now, some have argued that over recent years, maybe the pace of change when we talk about how to achieve net zero and how to decarbonize the maritime industry hasn't been fast enough. Maybe these days we see some more traction, and there's certainly happening a lot at EU level. So today we would like to learn a little bit more about EU ETS and what it means for shipping. So let's dive straight into it. So my first question to you would really be, what does EU ETS mean and how will it apply to shipping in the future?
Well, thank you for that and welcome, Anne. Good to be here. ETS, long story. Started actually way back in 2005. So this is not the case of a new regulation for shipping. It's rather shipping being brought into an old existing one. So it kind of builds on pre-existing mechanisms, but of course adding some tweaks to cater to the mobility of ships. Now, it builds on the monitoring, reporting, and verification mechanism. That's important to recognize because we got that regulation back in 2018, so that's kind of the platform for this whole thing. But it will, of course, need to evolve and change a bit because so there will be modifications to the MRV incoming. But first and foremost, I think what our viewers will be most interested in hearing about is when does this kick in? And the short answer is it's just around the corner. 1st of January 2024 becomes the first reporting year under the ETS. Now, what that means is that you, as a shipping company, you will be collecting data in 2024. That data will be the basis for calculating your emission liabilities. Those emission liabilities will then translate into so-called EU allowances, carbon credits, if you will, emission allowances, you can many names. They will need to be surrendered or deleted from a carbon account the 30th of September, the year after you have collected the data. So in essence, 30th of September 2025 will be the first legal compliance point where you actually will need to surrender those EUAs to be in compliance with the regulations. So we have a significant cost impact here. How that is going to work out is something we'll be coming to, of course. But the key point, I think, here is that you, as a shipping company, if you are subject to the MRV regulations today, you are covered. If you are subject to the foreseen enhancements of the ETS in 2025, for instance, you will have offshore coming in that on the M reporting side. It'll come into the ETS in 2027, so you will also need to comply. So we are starting with what we have today, and then with this will be expanding as time goes by. Key point. Lots of money that need to be spent.
So, Arik, then let's talk a little bit more about the impact. You just mentioned kind of financial implications this will have. So a few more words on the implications for the maritime industry.
Yeah. Two sets of implications. Legal stuff, where you'll need to meet legal compliance 30th of September, the year after you have reported your emissions. And then the commercial implications, which come down to the fact that when you emit in 2024, you start generating financial exposure because those emissions actually translate to money. And when you speak of the money here, we have the fact that 1 ton of CO2 translates to 1 EUA that needs to be bought or acquired somehow. Today, that 1 EUA would cost you around 100 euros. When you look at what those numbers mean for shipping, you're looking at roughly 10 billion euros per year at that price level when we get to 2026, when we have full effectiveness of the regulation. Now, that's a lot of money. And you, of course, will want to have this covered through your contracts. And for contracts yet to be established, you can, of course, try to write in those clauses saying that someone else will need to compensate you as an operator for those costs. They may not be happy to do so, but, this is a commercial negotiation. But then you still have the problem, of course, with existing contracts, long-term charter parties that have been established that also need to take care of this. And that means renegotiating contracts, and that can always be a bit complex. Then you have the issue that, yes, you have your contracts, they are in place, you have done all the necessary work in getting the MRV mechanisms, your MRV reporting set up appropriately, and that also will take some time. But at the end of the day, when you're going to settle the financials here, you actually need to see that you all are agreed on how much is being emitted. What are the actual emissions from a ship? And there will be disagreements. The charter may have one angle on that. The ship operator may have a different angle. And you can, of course, wait for your verified MRV emission report under the legal system, under the legal framework, to be made available in 2025. you simply don't have time for that in the commercial world. If you have contracts where you need financials settled early in Q1 2024, you will actually then need to have that data available also in 2024, which brings us to that need for real-time verified emission data. Have someone that can provide trust in this system where the cargo owner, the ship owner, the charterer, the manager, the operator, all are in agreement on what has actually been emitted. There may still be contractual issues concerning who is to cover what, but at least you'll have a common data platform to agree on what has been emitted. So you'll be dealing from facts at least, and not opinions, which probably would be quite helpful here. I would also say that there is an aspect here that needs to be taken care of that doesn't necessarily translate to money from the shipping company perspective, but that is going to be important. And that is the fact that this system builds on the MRV. The MRV has been in place since 2018 to cater to the peculiarities, if you will, that the ETS introduces. There will be changes. We will have new ship types coming in. We will have new ship sizes potentially coming in. You will have new gases coming in. Methane and N2O, nitrous oxide, is going to be part of the reporting from 2024 and part of the ETS from 2026. You will have company reporting coming in. And company reporting may potentially be quite significant here, because what that means is that if you are a ship manager, you're the dock holder, you are doing the MRV reporting for everybody. That means that you are responsible for meeting the ETS obligations. In essence, you are on the hook for the money. And if you don't pay up, there will be penalties from the EU. So what do you do if you have some ships that are under your management where the money flow doesn't work right? So you don't get the compensation that you need to meet your obligations. Not only will those ships be having an issue compliance-wise, but the way the regulation is written, all ships that are under your management will actually be in the same hold regulation-wise and subject to penalties, because it's you as a company that's subject to penalties. So the risk of having some, I wouldn't necessarily call them bad actors, but some non-compliant vessels can actually translate into legal consequences for the entirety of the fleet of ships under your management. That needs to be dealt with. And one of the ways that you can actually work this is to make sure that when you set up your MRV system and MRV reporting, you will at least have a smoothly functioning system there that allows you to keep track of how the emission liabilities are generated and how the obligations are being met if you have contractual relationships saying that they should be met in real time as you go, which could be an option here. Many varieties, many complex ways of doing this, but at least you will have some options if you have a system in place that allows you to deal with this in an adequate way in the company at least.
In a consistent way.
Yeah.
In a way, a single source of truth is really what is needed.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked a lot about the challenge, which is huge. Let's maybe talk a little bit about possible solutions. What would be your recommendation? How could the industry, or maybe shipping companies to begin with, prepare? What do you think?
Well, I think I've addressed the key issues. We have the legal aspects where you have a bit of time in a sense. You have the commercial aspects where you have no time. Both are fairly imminent, but one, of course, more than the other. But the ETS is only 8 months away. You have to start thinking about this now. You cannot wait. You cannot really delay and say, I will wait and see what happens when this comes around, because that is when you're going to run into not necessarily the legal issues immediately, but to the commercial issues. Who is going to pay for what? Will you be getting the money you need to meet your obligations? And I think that is the key point. You have to start thinking about this now. And obviously, I would suggest that what you should do if you're watching this and you are wondering what that actually means in practice, you should start talking to your local friendly DNV representative. We will be more than happy to help you in understanding what's coming down the road and getting your house in order so that you're ready for what the future may bring here.
Yeah, so if anything, you need to get on top of your data as soon as possible and get prepared.
Definitely. get that right.
Thank you very much for your time today, Eirik. This brings us to the close of this short interview. Thank you.
And here we are back again live from Hamburg. Thanks again to Eirik Nies for shedding some light on EU ETS and some interesting and really tough challenges that he mentioned there. And one thing I took note of that Eirik said is that the need for close to real-time verified data is absolutely crucial, and that time is of the essence because the first EU ETS reporting year is only about 8 months away. So no time to be wasted, and also no need to worry because, of course, DNV is here to help. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to learn a little bit more about how you can get on top of your emissions data and how you can tackle operational challenges beyond compliance with Emissions Connect and with Paul Lande. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Anne. So let's get into it. We are incredibly proud to introduce our new service, Emissions Connect, to the industry. We believe that we have developed a uniquely useful solution that addresses some of the most pressing issues faced by the maritime sector. So without further ado, let's dive into the details of Emissions Connect and explore its potential. In the past, emissions management and emissions data management was primarily focused on technical and compliance issues. However, the landscape is rapidly changing. The introduction of the EU emissions trading system, or EU ETS, in short, for the maritime industry, and the growing use of carbon intensity indicators, or CII for short, in commercial contracts have elevated the importance of emissions management to a business-critical level, with significant financial and operational implications. As we approach next year with the implementation of the EU ETS, those operating in or towards Europe will face a drastically altered risk and financial liability environment. This is where Emissions Connect can make a difference. So let's take a moment to explore why a solution like Emissions Connect is essential. To do this, we must first understand the complexity of the maritime value chain. Now, broadly speaking, the industry can be divided into various key players, such as ship managers, owners, operators, and charters, and cargo owners. And today, ship managers mostly handle emissions management for compliance purposes. However, moving forward, every player in the value chain will need to get involved. Under new regulations, EU ETS allowances will, to a large extent, be secured by players on the right side of this value chain and passed down to ultimately ship managers on the left. Conversely, emissions data will be generated on the far left of this picture and passed up to the right. Throughout the year, we will see in many cases a series of transactions such as transferal of emission allowances occurring, with emissions data playing a vital role in each one. Additionally, with the growing incorporation of CII in charter party agreements, accurate performance data will be crucial for both contract parties. This is where Emissions Connect steps in. Our solution tackles this complex issue by providing a single real-time verified source of truth for emission data that everyone in the value chain can rely on. This innovative approach stands in sharp contrast to today's, I would say, fragmented and insecure data management systems. Emissions Connect streamlines emissions management and data sharing, enabling all stakeholders to make informed decisions and meet their obligations more effectively. Now, there are three primary challenges that organizations face in this setting. These are data management, trust, and insights. And to put it simply, if you can't manage your data, how can you trust it? And if you can't trust your data, how can you derive insights from it? So the first and most fundamental issue is data management, ensuring data quality, collecting all the necessary data, consolidating it in a single location, and using a consistent format are all critical aspects here. And typically, stakeholders on the right side of the value chain, for example, cargo owners, face more significant challenges in accessing and managing data generated on board. Now, once you have gained control of your data management, the next challenge is trust. Can you trust your data when, for example, making substantial investments in carbon credits? The typical verification regimes today operate on an annual basis, whereas Emissions Connect provides verification daily, enabling you to trust your data. And lastly, without trust in your data, how can you derive insights and make informed and business-critical decisions? Emissions Connect builds upon the two previous pillars and features comprehensive ship, fleet, and voyage monitoring, and it features a future voyage simulator. So Emissions Connect addresses all three challenges with one comprehensive solution. Our platform is the most powerful emissions data management tool on the market, offering daily verification and actionable insights to help you make better decisions and meet your obligations. Let's take a closer look at the Emissions Connect solution. We will start by addressing data management. Here, we are introducing our data workbench, a user-friendly self-service tool that allows you to access all your emissions data, whether you have provided it yourself or received it from others. With the data workbench, you can work with data in various ways and securely and easily share data with your stakeholders, both internal and external. The platform also comes with predefined sharing templates, such as those designed for sharing with Poseidon Principles signatories or the Sea Cargo Charter. Sharing data with the workbench is easy. Here we show how to create and share a dataset for Poseidon Principles. So we just click the share button. We give the dataset a name, for example, Poseidon Fleet 2022. And then we save it. And we choose the recipient of this dataset. With Emissions Connect, seamless data sharing and collaboration has never been easier. Next, we will show you how Emissions Connect can be utilized to generate DNV statements for a voyage. So to begin, we select a vessel, and we decide whether or not we want to include CII correction factors. Then we create a voyage by selecting the individual legs that make up the journey, such as a voyage here from Antwerp to Gdynia, and then we click on Generate Statement. Emissions Connect will then create a DNV statement based on the data for that specific voyage. This statement you can use for documentation purposes in settlements or transactions, ensuring accuracy and transparency. You just simply generate the voyage statement verified by DNV, and you send it to your stakeholders for trusted collaboration. Next, let's take a look at the Emissions Connect simulator. This powerful tool enables you to simulate CII performance for any vessel and future voyage, allowing you to compare historical ratings with potential future voyages and ultimately make more informed decisions about how you utilize your vessels. So using the simulator is straightforward. First, you select a vessel and create a voyage. In this example, we will be simulating a voyage from Baltimore to Hamburg. And let's assume that the original plan is to complete the voyage at 10 knots. Now we will examine the difference in CII rating predicted if we increase the speed to 13 knots. The simulator will then display the CII impact of the alternative speeds and compare it with the historical actual CII rating. This is valuable information that can help you optimize your vessel operations and make strategic decisions to minimize emissions and maximize efficiency. So in summary, Emissions Connect addresses and solves most of the challenges that arise from current and upcoming emission data needs. It is the comprehensive solution that industry professionals across the entire maritime value chain have been seeking. But we know that getting started with a new digital service can often be a pain point and time-consuming. This is why we have tackled this issue head-on to make the onboarding process as seamless as possible. We have created a partner program. We have partnered with reporting software providers in the market. And as a result, we have already established partnerships covering more than 30,000 ships. This means that it is very likely that most of your ships are ready to connect already today. So we can confidently say that getting started with Emissions Connect is truly easy. This allows you to focus on what really matters and steer your business with confidence.
Thank you so much, Paul. Really, really interesting stuff. Really good presentation as well. If I may, two follow-up questions from my side. Now, if I understood it correctly, the challenge is twofold. So you've got the operational challenge on the one hand, and you've got the regulatory challenge to surrender your EU allowances based on your annual MRV verification. Now, how does that link together?
I think that's perhaps the core of the issue, actually, that the introduction of ETS is followed with only an annual-based verification regime, whereas, as I think we've mentioned earlier and we'll hear more about, the actual needs in the industry is to use this data at a much higher frequency. So that is, I think, a core of the issue.
Right. Okay, coming back to one thing that Knut mentioned earlier. Knut said that data is the currency. Now, if we take that very literally, how then can you pay? How can you transfer your relevant data to the relevant stakeholders across the value chain with Emissions Connect?
The easiest for everyone would, of course, be if everyone was using the data workbench. I think that would be great. I also think that's probably unrealistic. But we have built the data workbench and Emissions Connect in such a way that we support easy sharing of data to stakeholders, both internally and externally, in a multitude of ways. So I think we're all set.
Very good to hear that. Sounds easy enough to me. Thanks for now, Paul. Now, ladies and gentlemen, coming back to another thing that Knut mentioned in his opening keynote, he said collaboration is the true fuel of the future. And that is, of course, very true for everything that needs to happen to decarbonize the industry. But it's also very relevant for innovation in general, because innovation never happens in isolation. And also Emissions Connect hasn't just been developed by us in DNV, but together with quite a few industry partners representing all parts of the maritime value chain. And in a minute, you will get to listen to a panel discussion where some of them will share their views on the challenge at hand and will share how they're aiming to tackle this. The panel will be moderated by the business director of DNV Maritime, Trond Hodne. But before I hand over to Trond, let's listen to some more industry voices that we've collected at previous DNV events who share their view on how to tackle decarbonization and emissions management. Let's listen in.
I see 2023 as being the year in which we adjust to a new normal and we adjust to longer-term thinking again. And I think in terms of sustainability, that's a good thing. And consumers, investors, regulators, society as a whole is going to look to the value of what people are doing.
Shipping is so integral to the global supply chain. Just again, since we're talking about sustainability and decarbonization, international shipping emit 3% of global GHG emissions. And again, 3% sounds like it's small, but it's not that small. It's equivalent to the emissions of the 6th largest emitter, which is Germany.
We really have to focus on today is what we can do today. We have to plan for the future, but we're ordering ships we need now for our fleet. And I don't think there's any one single answer that is likely to be fit for purpose.
And then when you look at future propulsion, of course, one can debate today about, was LNG a good choice? But I think that kind of illustrates very much where the market is. Nobody really knows.
So I think it's going to be a very individual decision for every owner, depending on the fleet they have, the segment they operate and the age of their fleet.
The deep sea market, it takes a longer time to adapt, and we're not there today.
Collaboration is clearly a key for this to happen. Whilst we, of course, need to accept the fact that we are in a competitive environment. So it's finding this fine balance.
Let's just confirm that further regulations will be needed in order to frame the decarbonization of shipping. Otherwise, it will not happen. But it is not regulations who creates decarbonization. It is the industry who creates decarbonization.
So thank you, Anna. In the next 25 minutes or so, I will be happy moderating a discussion with some of our partners, what they are doing, and plan to do tackling the EU ETS challenge commercially and operationally. So we have 3 guests with us today, covering different parts of the maritime value chain when it comes to the EU ETS challenge. So let me welcome to our virtual stage, Øyvind Stordal, Head of Data and Performance Management at Wilhelmsen, and also representing Hekla Emission Management. Hekla is a newly founded joint venture with Affinity Shipping, and with ambition to assist ship owners and charters to manage the impact of EU ETS specifically. Also with us today is Jørgen Thuesen, Vice President Technical at Hafnia. And as stated on their website, Hafnia is the world's largest and forward-thinking tanker company. Jørgen and Hafnia are collaborating with our next guest to get data from ship to shore. So welcome, Anders Brun, CEO of Coach Solutions, a company set out to revolutionize the shipping industry by removing friction and guesswork. So then let's start with you, Øyvind. So Hekla is a newly founded company, and on your website you state that Hekla Emission Management has been created to assist ship owners and charterers with all the compliance obligation associated with managing the EU ETS. So from your view, what is the commercial impact from EU ETS? And how to deal with the contractual challenges through the value chain? And also, can you just briefly tell us a bit about the service that you offer? And in it also the importance of verified real-time emission data.
Yes, I can. And first and foremost, thank you very much for having me speaking at this event. Let's start with, it's a long question, so let's start with the commercial impact of EU ETS. This is going to add a cost to emission in Europe for shipping companies and charters. And in a fully implemented scenario that we will see in 2026, when 100% of the emissions will be covered, you're looking at the cost between 5,000 to 20,000 euros or dollars per day per vessel, of course, depending on vessel type and vessel size, speed and consumption, of course, also the EUA price. But it's a significant amount of money you're talking about that suddenly is introduced into industry that is focusing a lot on cost on the cost side in their operations. So this is going to have a huge impact in our view. Another element that's important to remember in this is that the structure of ETS is that the number of EUAs available in the market will reduce over time, and this will also most likely push the price of carbon emission up in the coming years, with the EU's ambition of call it enabling a green transition and pushing industry players in that direction. When it comes to the contractual side of it, we see that at least short term, it's going to be a challenge to make sure that it's sorted out between ship owners and charters, especially for the time charter parties that goes into 2024 and might not have EU ETS specific clauses in their documents already. So I think it's important to already now start to review the time charter parties that's in place, and then also consider how to implement emissions cost clauses into these documents and contracts. And then you can start to ask questions like, okay, what data should be used as basis or foundation for the settlement on the emission cost? Who's going to be the verifier, and how frequent are we going to have settlements between charters and ship owners? EU is quite clear that the polluter pay principle is ruling here. So in our view, it's going to be charters who have to pick up the bill, while the ship owner and the technical manager will be the call it compliance party here. In terms of HECLA emissions management, we saw early on that this is going to be a big thing for the industry. So we teamed up with Affinity Shipping, a shipbroking company based out of London. And our ambition is basically to help ship owners and charters to comply with EU ETS. And this involves quite a lot. You have, of course, you have to take a decision on how you play in the carbon market. So we offer carbon market advisory. We enable EUA procurement and also CO2 accounting and EUA and registry management, which is more the administrative part of the EUA process. And as a basis for all of this, we see that real-time and high-frequency verified data is going to be very important. And the reason for that is that I don't think anyone would like to call it push the emission cost settlement towards end of the year, as it is today with the MRV setup basically being once a year kind of verification. So that's I hope that answered the questions.
Thank you very much, David.
Yeah.
So over to you, Jørgen. Hafnia, you have been early and also the main partner in developing Emission Connect. So from your point of view, how do you view the commercial implication of EU ETS for Hafnia and your customers, as well as the implication for your operations?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for being invited to this session. I think our industry in general, at least for the tanker part, is pretty much in line with Hafnia and the intention to hand over the extra cost for these allowances to the one that actually charter our vessels. There's no doubt that ship owners in general will not be able to accumulate this kind of extra cost because it's quite a lot, and there's a lot of other extra cost and investments in the pipeline to meet this zero emission target. So So we need to involve, you can say, the charters and the customers on that part as well. For Hafnia, our main trade is in the spot market, meaning that it's voyage-based. So we cannot just sit on the fence and wait a year or more until we have, you can say, the overview of how much we have to pay. And there's no doubt that the charter will definitely not, you can say, accept to get a bill maybe 13, 14, 15 months after the voyage has been finalized. So here it's extremely important that we are on top of it, so we can, on a voyage basis, actually make an invoice or a statement on how much allowance or greenhouse gases has been connected to the specific voyage, so we can actually use that and hand over to our customers or charters for that matter. As I said, we need a tool in the toolbox to handle this regulation. And the impact it will have on our trade. For us, it's essential that we can predict or know the cost before the vessel is actually fixed. And even more important, that we can document the greenhouse gas impact on the voyage after the voyage is finalized, so that we can make sure that the vessel data, which is the basis for the calculation, are correct and verified, so the outcome cannot be discussed. I mean, it should be as correct as it can be, and somebody has to make, you can say, the verification on a voyage basis, so that the statement that actually is connected to the voyage is verified. We cannot wait, as I said, until a year after for this. There's no doubt that EU ETS will be another administrative burden to ship owners. So again, it's essential that we develop a tool. For us, it's similar, or the tool could be similar to the CII tool that we have developed with DNV, because it's mainly the same issues that are the basic for EU ETS as we see it from our point of view. So many of our big charters and customers that we have discussed this with will have their own allowance trading desk. So when we make a statement or invoice or whatever we would like to call it for a voyage, then we will actually give the charters the option to either pay in allowances, I mean transfer the allowances that is needed for that voyage into the vessel's account, or they can pay in US dollars or whatever, and then we take care of that trading. And again, we need a tool to handle that. So our target and intentions behind the CII tool is basically the same as we need for handling the EU ETS.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jørgen. Anders, you are an essential partner to Hafnia, and basically in order to get the data from the ship to shore. So what is it that you hear from the market and your customers about the importance of EU ETS?
Well, first of all, thank you for being invited to this session. I think overall there's a positive impact or a positive feedback from our clients towards EU ETS because there is a willingness to become more sustainable in the market. I also think that compared to, for example, the CII, EU ETS is viewed as a better thing because it's relating directly to the cargo, and that means it's more flexible, where the CII has some drawbacks with respect to that. On the negative side, there's of course somebody or some saying that it's a local initiative, which means that suboptimal cargo handling might become an issue here, because you want to avoid or have as low cost as possible. So there's also a push from our clients, at least for the IMO, to implement a similar scheme overall that covers the entire world. So I think overall it's positive, but there's of course a lot of concerns with respect to how is this going to work in practice. So yeah, that's the feedback we're getting.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anders. Then to you, Jørgen. You know, given the commercial implication of EU ETS that we now have been discussing a bit, how important is it really that the data can be trusted?
And there's no doubt whatsoever that is essential that we can trust the data that we actually based our calculation on, and it's really important that it's verified by someone. So I mean, both the verification and trusting of the data is going hand in hand, and it is essential for us.
Yeah, thank you, Jørgen. So if you sort of turn the question over to you, Anders, how do coach then ensure high quality data is provided to Hafnia, and also in this, how important do you see data standardization?
Yeah, so the coach solution package is based off of new reporting because we have to be able to get on board every vessel at every point in time, whether it's an owned vessel or a short-term time charter, and collect data. So we have implemented multiple verification layers or levels, you can say, in order to be sure that the data that we get back from the vessel is correct. What we do is that we build a digital twin of the vessel, and that is for all vessels that we get in, and then we verify the data against that digital twin. The first level being out on board the vessel, where the crew actually reports. We validate the data out there against the digital twin of the vessel before the data is even submitted to shore. By doing this, the captain or whoever is reporting has to tick off that what they have reported is correct. Once the data then reaches shore, we do shoreside validation, both digitally, where we hold the data up against further parameters, and then we also have ex-seafarers, ex-captains sitting and looking at the data if there are anything that falls out of place. So it's all about having multiple steps in order to ensure the data that we received is correct. From this standardization, with respect to standardization of data, I think we see it maybe a little bit differently. There's a lot of standards already out there. And for every standard that is released into the market, we don't standardize anything, because I think now there are at least 30 different new reporting standards. So what we have been focusing a lot on is making sure that we can integrate to multiple parties, such as the DNV Veracity platform, various voyage management system like IMOS. We have a verification company, Verifavia. We have Kongsberg's Digital, Vessel Insights, and other partners. And we make sure that data can flow freely into those systems. So we make sure that it's the same data that is being used across multiple platforms. That makes life easier for our clients, but it also makes the life easier for our partners, because it's the same data that flows through. We have made sure that the data is as correct as possible, and that actually increases the value of the partners' products as well. So I think it's all about integrations from our point of view here.
Thank you, Anders. Øyvind, you have met a lot of ship managers, owners, charters, I assume, in the last few months. And how do you see it? Is the market ready to deal with the EU ETS challenge?
I have to say we have met a lot of stakeholders lately, the last 2 quarters especially, and I have to say it's a twofold answer. A few are ready for EU ETS, and what's holding them back is, call it regulatory text and maybe slowness in the regulatory process. But some have understood that this is going to be a major factor in the coming years, and also a potential area for conflict between stakeholders. These companies often tend to be large and have a little bit of proximity to EU. And on the other hand, you have quite a few players out there who's maybe medium to small companies, not that much resources, who's also a little bit more distance to EU, who's not ready for this. Yesterday, actually, I met someone who haven't heard about ETS before here in Singapore, and this is of course a little bit scary when you think about it in terms of the impact that this regulation will have. And I think from a contractual point of view, as we discussed earlier, the fact that people are not preparing for this at the moment is a challenge. But then again, I think tools like Emission Connects is going to be an enabler for the stakeholders to actually grasp this, and of course it's not too late to start now, and I think I would highly recommend people to start reading up on this topic, because and also talk to the guys in DNV that we have had discussions with along the way here, who has a very competent base for this topic, even though the regulatory side is not fully clear yet with all the details I have to underline there.
Okay, then thank you very much. So that's the end of the debate. So before I let you go, a quick question for all of you. Our Maritime CEO, Knut Ørbæk-Nielsen, mentioned earlier that collaboration is the fuel, data is the currency, and trust must be at the heart of it. So do we need more collaboration, more data, or is trust the ultimate enabler? So let's start with you, Jørgen, then Anders, and Øyvind at the end.
Yes, I'm definitely fully in line with Knut that cooperation across the industry with all stakeholders involved is the key for the transition to take place. I mean, we have a very short timeline, and I think that this is actually a proven concept, that intention and nice work is nice, but we have actually proven that when we work together, we can achieve more and much faster.
Yeah, I have to agree with Jan here on collaboration is key. I think that we're collecting a lot of data at the moment from the vessel, and a lot of that data is not being used. So I think we have plenty of data, but collaborating and making sure that data actually flows freely between applications to the benefit of the users, but also the different applications is key. And in order to achieve that, we of course need trust among the different partners and stakeholders.
Yeah, and I can just echo that. It's definitely no need for more data at the moment. I think it's what we have to focus on is the accuracy of the data and making it as trustworthy as possible. Having someone, a third party, as that has been mentioned here, verifying it. But collaboration and trust is obviously key, and I think if you look at this regulation from a distance, this will impact all the players in the value chain here, and collaborating together with this can make us tackle it in a good way, I think. So I support the statement for sure.
Okay, thank you, Jørgen, Anders, and Øyvind, very much for participating in our launch event for Emissions Connect. Then back to studio and you, Anne Moschner.
Thank you so very much, Trond, and everybody. Really, really interesting short debate there. And I'm so happy to have also sensed some optimism there in between the lines, despite all the challenges at hand. Paul, any key highlights that you want to mention following this discussion?
No, I would say that the word collaboration is used a lot. I think it's really important to dig into that and see what that means in practical terms. It can be quite complicated and complex. Secondly, I think it's clear now from what we've heard that the impact of EU ETS in the maritime industry will be massive. And on the back of that, my personal take is that a large part of the industry is not fully prepared for that.
which means people have to start looking into that as soon as possible. And there, of course, Emissions Connect may be a good solution. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have to come to a close very, very shortly. But before we do that, I'll give Paul the unique opportunity to share your key takeaways, the 3 things you would like people to take home from today's event.
Emissions performance and emissions data management now goes far beyond minimum regulatory compliance. That's number 1. Number 2, annual verification, checking of data is not going to cut it. And number 3, of course, I have to say this, Emissions Connect can help solve these issues.
Thank you. Those were really nice closing remarks. Thank you for being in the studio with us here today, Paul. Thank you to all of you following us on the line. This event is about to end, ladies and gentlemen, but the journey towards net zero, of course, has only just begun. And whether you're looking for a sparring partner and somebody to discuss the next small step on your company's decarbonization journey, or whether you would like to talk more long-term about your decarbonization strategy, naturally, everybody in DNV is very, very happy to help. So just reach out. And don't forget to go to dnv.com/emissionsconnect to find out more about the solution, to reach out, to fill out a contact form. It's really worthwhile doing that. Emissions Connect is available now. Thank you for today.
Reliable and verified emissions data. It's no longer a nice to have, it's a must have. But if you can't manage your data, how can you trust it? And if you can't trust it, how can you use it to steer your business? The way forward is DNV's Emissions Connect. From fragmented streams to a single source. From manual reporting to monitoring and verification in real time. From unreliable forecasts to simulation-based insights. A single source of verified data that the whole value chain can share, trust, and act on. Advance from raw data to sustainable operations with DNV's Emissions Connect. DNV, when trust matters.